Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Boom Broadcasting presents Three from Deep. I'm your host, Jason Calenzo. Welcome to the show. Happy Saturday, y'all. So excited about talking some NBA today with you here over the weekend. Lots to talk about, lots going on in the association. We got streaking going on with the Rockets. We got a huge sale to talk about here in a little bit here with those Boston Celtics. The playoff picture, even though you think it's coming together, man, that Wild Wild West is all kinds of going crazy with teams jockeying for position. And we got a few other things to talk about too. But, you know, I keep saying we, because I am not alone today. I have someone with me here I am super excited to have on the show. He is part of the Boom Broadcasting family, showed me a lot of support, and I appreciate that. He's got an awesome, awesome show, guys. If you have not checked it out yet, you have to. Quick hits. I got my man, Podcast Smitty, Mr. Shannon Smith, joining me on the show. Here you go. Welcome, Shannon. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. Let's talk some basketball. We've had some things happen in the NBA, and I'm looking forward to talking about it with you, my man. Hey, before we begin, love the show. The layout of your show has been great. It's been one of my favorite shows to watch. It's been even better than when I love Out of Pocket. Michael Davis, you take that, buddy.
I love it, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate the love, man, and support, man. It is awesome. I love your show too, especially you got the new layout and kind of the new vibe you got going on here. But you got to get the quick hits in. So, guys, please jump on Boo Broadcasting, like and subscribe. Check me out here. Check Podcast Smitty out on the quick hits. We're striving for that 5. We're striving for that 500. We're so close, guys. So, you know what I'm saying? Talk to your neighbors. Talk to your friends. Get them to jump on here. Get in now, guys, because Boom is going to blow up here. So be one of the first. You know what I'm saying? So, dude, I'm excited about the NBA right now, too. There is so much madness going on, especially here in March Madness. I know a lot of people right now are paying attention to the tournament going on, which we kind of are too, but man, I'm paying attention to a lot of basketball. So first things first I want to jump into is we just had a mega sale happen over this week. The Boston Celtics, Bill Chisholm Group looks to acquire the Celtics for $6.1 billion. And that's, guys, it's $1 billion. Woo! That is unbelievable to think about. And just to put it in perspective, in 2002, the Boston Celtics sold for $360 million. Now they just got sold for $6.1 billion. You talk about an ROI, your return on investment. The NBA is where it's at. So, Smitty, when you saw this, like, what was the first thing that went through your head when you saw that number? And the Boston Celtics. So you talk about a historic franchise. So what was your thoughts?
You know, my first initial thought was, you know, I don't care how big a team is. Who's got $6.1 billion? That was the first thing.
Not us.
That's a lot of daggone money. But, you know, that also, the number, the figure goes to the fact that the Boston Celtics have accumulated, you know, just how they've stepped up, because, you know, you and I remember when the Celtics were, you know, were great at one point in time. They were great. And then later on, you know, in that 90s, you know, the 96, you know, from about maybe 2004, you know, the Celtics weren't that big of a squad. And then later on, they have the big three after Danny Ainge pulling one of the biggest moves in the NBA draft. You know, getting Ray Allen and then getting Kevin Garnett in the same year, and then going and winning a championship. You know, the Boston Celtics are a storied franchise. You know, they are in the Blue Bloods. You know, if we had the NBA Blue Bloods, the Celtics are there. Like, we know that. But with that being said, still now, and with them even accumulating now, because, you know, winning a championship as well, too, that increases your value also, too. It's just that, you know, in return on investment, I like that you brought that up. Return on investment. You know, any businessman wants to make a profit. The Celtics right now I mean, you can make a profit off the Celtics, man, because, and they could repeat, which is another thing too. They could repeat. And that's even better, so anybody that's wanting to get a squad that has a chance to create instant revenue, I mean, it's kind of hard to not want that. So, I mean, I get it. I understand it. It's a crazy sale, a lot of money, but, I think it's worth it.
Right. And one of my biggest questions I had, and you start talking about money like that. Now, these are ownership groups. Yeah, you got one guy at the head, but they have a ton of different investors. This is like A-Rod, joining the group to buy the T-Wolves and the Lynx. So you got a lot of these groups that get together. You got one guy that kind of foots a lot of the bill. But the biggest question I have is when you are a team and you get sold for that much money. I remember when people thought Ballmer was crazy when he spent $2 billion on the Clippers. Everybody was like, "Holy crap! You just spent $2 billion on the Clippers." When teams spend that much money, what does that do to the players? So I start thinking about the trickle down effect. Yeah. You know what? When you talk about money, that's something. Ownership group comes in, they start putting their own people in place and doing all these things. And they kind of put their spin on it, and I'm going to make the organization better. I'm going to do some things different. That starts to trickle down to the players. And what I start thinking about is from a player's perspective, does this type of sale put more pressure on the players? Look, these players are under a tremendous amount of pressure as it is to perform, to be there for the fans, to get set for the next contract. But does a sale like this really add something else to that pressure that these players have? So now I got to perform, because if I don't, this guy starts losing money. Just what are your thoughts on the trickle down effect on a sale this big on the actual players?
When you posed that to me today, that really got me thinking. And, look at the Washington Commanders. When they changed ownership, that team changed. Right. They went from not contending for anything. And, a lot of that you can attribute to luck, or you can contribute it to other parameters. They did get a new quarterback and he exceeded expectations in his first year. Yeah. Things like that, don't generally happen, but they can. But also, too, you got to look at it. They were under bad ownership for years, and they got to start. So with a squad like that had basically nothing to lose and no one really saw coming,
right?
I mean, it's great when it works, but then also too with the example that you gave me when you were explaining everything today, you added the Dallas Mavericks.
The opposite side of the coin, man. Woo.
Right. So, they had a formula. It looked like they had a formula. The Dallas Mavericks were playing for an NBA title last year. And then all of a sudden, they just threw the baby out with the bathwater. And now they're at the bottom of the Western Conference. You look at that as well, too, because, you're just like, you have those things happen. You go from being not seen to being seen. And then later on, you decide, hey, we're going to make some changes. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. And then you get rid of the original formula. What I think of with the Celtics, there's a lot of pressure. It doesn't matter. It's pro sports. I don't care what anybody says. You're under an immense amount of pressure because you're the best of the best. However, when you make moves like that, you are expected to perform. And when I say perform, I mean perform. So with the Celtics team, considering the fact that they're the blue blood, considering the fact that they're creme de la creme, they were the NBA for a long time, more titles than any franchise in the NBA whatsoever. Name alone is going to be something as well, too. So, I think that has a lot to do with it, especially with a franchise like the Boston Celtics. Now, with the Commanders as well, too, they were a great franchise at one point in time, but they weren't the franchise that a lot of people feared.
Right.
So the Celtics are a franchise that a lot of people have had to respect, a lot of people have had to fear for a long time. And they're being feared right now as a repeat for an Eastern Conference title, for a NBA title. So they're competing. They're in the hunt. So yet still, there's still some type of, we got to look at these guys. There's value in the Celtics because of their name.
Right.
But yeah, an immense amount of pressure, absolutely, with the fact that you're repeating and the fact that you're contending for a title. Yeah.
Now, what about front office type of stuff? So, like the Commanders, when they had that change, and I'm glad you brought them up. I live here in Northern VA, and we went through that he who not be named ownership group for a very long time, and they were horrendous. I mean, with the allegations and some of the things and the product that they put on the field was terrible. But as a Giants fan, it's hard to cheer for the Commanders. But in the NFL, you hate seeing a historic team go through those kind of things. But take somebody like the Celtics, who do have success. Commanders, they had to clean house.
Yes.
So putting new guys in place, putting new GMs in place, putting new presidents in place. So when that ownership group came in, and that to me was the most impressive thing that they changed. They completely changed the culture. It's one thing, product on the field, you're always going to have some growing pains. So they really didn't have a lot of expectations. So they blew expectations out of the water. The biggest thing I saw was the culture change of the people within the organization, especially within the community and around here. Now, you go to someone like the Celtics, the opposite end of the coin, who are historic franchise and coming off an NBA championship as an ownership group. How much do you muddle with that? Do you go in there and like, okay, the season's over now, guys. Okay, now I'm going to put all my people in. I'm going to get these guys out. I know we've been winning, but I want my. So how much do you kind of mess with something that works as an owner?
You don't. You don't. I mean, anybody out there right now, you don't. I mean, they have two guys they have a franchise guy. Tatum is a franchise guy. Jaylen Brown is a franchise guy. At one point in time, they may part ways. They might. For Boston Celtics fans, I think they are kind of happy that they didn't, because at one point in time it was talked about. But from a perspective of from winning, from contending for an Eastern Conference title, for contending for an NBA title, you shouldn't have to mess with that. I don't care how much pride it is. I don't care what vision that you have. You have a future that is going to be coming up. There's future. There's a draft, of course. There's free agency, of course. But with that being said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We have egos with owners. Now, that's another thing also, too, we got to get at. Some of these players don't have near the ego that some of these owners have. None of them. So you have to look at that as well, too. Looking at you, David Tepper. But you have to.
Difference between millionaires and billionaires.
Exactly.
Big sometimes.
And I'm in the Carolinas, so I get it. So I understand. So, I mean, you have a guy that, has more ego than his whole team running your team as well, too. So you're going to have that. So, but with the Celtics, I really don't see that with them. I don't, because of the legacy and the fact that they're expected to win now. You've got a fan base that expects you to win now. And they've expected wins for years. Even when they weren't winning, they were expecting wins for years because they're used to championships. They're used to winning titles, the pedigree that they have. There's still pressure there. And I guarantee you, if front office started digging into a winning formula, you'll hear it from the fans.
Right.
You'll hear it from them.
Oh, yeah, definitely. They're hardcore up there. The other thing that I started thinking about when I saw this is, again, you start thinking of numbers like that. Us common folk don't know that kind of money and that kind of power. But you look at again, we talked about the ROI, return on investment, but you look at how many athletes now are getting into ownership. You look at Michael Jordan with the Charlotte Hornets. I know LeBron James says that when he's done playing ball, he wants to own a team. David Beckham bought the soccer team there, Inter Miami CF, down in Florida. Magic Johnson, of course, one of the most famous ones, who owns part of the Dodgers now, the LA Sparks, the LAFC football club. Also owns part of the Commanders. He was part of the group that came in and bought the Commanders. Again, just mentioned A-Rod, part owner now with the T-Wolves and Lynx. Mahomes bought into the Kansas City Royals and sporting KC. To me, you start seeing those numbers and these teams growing exponentially. Do you think you're going to see even more of an influx of athletes trying to become owners? Because, once you're done with sports, you got to learn to make a living, because, that money kind of dries up a little bit real quick. Once you pay everybody and taxes and your people, that money doesn't last long. Ask Latrell Sprewell and Sean Kemp and some of them other guys. Them rims didn't make him a lot of money. But, so now you got guys that want to stay within sports and then get into the ownership group. So do you think when you see numbers like this, that you're going to see even more of an influx of, sports professionals becoming part owners or wanting to own a team?
I think so. And the reason why I say that is because look at some of these players that have retired early. Like, I know it's more of a thing in the NFL. There have been players that have retired early. And what have those players done? They've either got into coaching, or they either started getting into the sports business. They know sports. They played sports for years professionally. So they know the ropes. How many of these guys go in and be GMs? How many of these guys go in and go into the front office? They don't just do more than just coaching. They go in that front office. They start getting, because the real money is with ownership. The real money.
And you know that as a 49ers fan with Lynch going into the front office, who's done a fantastic job. Although this past year, I don't know what the heck they're doing, but that's a whole nother story. We'll get into football another day.
But I mean, that's the truth though. So, because they're realizing where the real money is with ownership, and the front office having a stake in something. So that's what I got to give credit to the modern day athlete. I think they figured out, from the mistakes of other athletes from the 80s and the 90s that thought that money was going to be there forever, and thought that money was going to grow exponentially just because of who they were, and realized that didn't happen. Now they're getting smart, and they're realizing, hey, you know what? This is where the real money is. Being on the floor is great, but like in the words of the rapper Currency, watching the game with the team owners, that's where you want to be. You want to be in the press box.
That owner's box. Yep. There's a big difference there too. And talked about it on Al Pocket on Friday night here. If you want, we can get an ownership group going together right now. The least expensive team in the NBA is the Grizzlies. So about $3 billion right now. So, that's to me chump change. If they just sold for $6, that's what I'm saying. Blow it up, baby. So $3 billion. And what I pose to him too is because I hope there gets to be a franchise in Seattle soon. I miss the Supersonics, Gary Payton, the Glove, Sean Kemp, Detlef Shrimp. I mean, not Detlef Shrimp. I'm trying to think of somebody else.
No, you're right. That
was a Detlef Shrimp. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
You talk about nostalgia that comes popular now, especially, some old heads like us. We love to kind of go in the way back machine here. So I'm thinking, we buy them for $3 billion. You take the Memphis Grizzlies. Not that I hate Memphis. It's a beautiful city. But, you talk about growing the brand and growing the product. Right now, what's nice is that I like about the Seattle situation is OKC gave up the name rights and gave back the history to the Seattle city and organization, which is fantastic. So whoever takes over and whoever does put a team in Seattle, they can be the Supersonics, and they get all that history back. So it's like just instant karma right there. So $3 billion, we get them Grizzlies, we get them out of Memphis. With Sean Kemp, we do some commercials. I think we could take $3 billion and we could flip that real easily in Seattle. So I'm down if you are. We get Mr. Davis to pitch in a little bit too. I think we get the Boom family together to get some change and throw it on the table here. So I think we can make it happen, man.
Hey, I'm cool with wearing the throwback from the Seattle Supersonics. That's old. It's vintage. I like it.
Yeah. Dude, I'm telling you right now, that kind of stuff sells, and look at it, it's about making money. So, thanks for having that segment with me. It is just unfathomable to think of the way that things have grown that much in the past 20 years, where you go from $360 million for a franchise to over $6 billion. Just again, boggles my mind, man. It is crazy. Salud.
Mad money being spent over the years, man. Mad money.
Mad money's being made. So I think that's what it's all about. So, but yo, the playoffs are coming soon. April 19th. Things are starting to heat up right now. Teams jockeying for position. First things first, we're going to jump. We'll start with the East, and we'll get into the West a little bit. But first thing I want to talk about, okay, in the East, you got the Cavs first place, second best record in NBA. Celtics right behind them, the returning champs. My Knicks, hopefully we get Brunson back and can make some noise. But then you got the Pacers and Bucks, who keep kind of flip-flopping back and forth. They're only a game behind each other, which whoever finishes what, I think it'll be fine. The Pistons and the Hawks are real quick, but real close too, because the Pistons are in that sixth spot, who are having a phenomenal season. Cade Cunningham has been, I'd say, probably comeback player of the year, if you want to call it that. But he is definitely showing why he was a first-round pick. With the game winner the other night, too. And then you have Hawks, Magic, Bulls, Heat. So first question I have for you that I want to talk about is Cavs. They look like a complete team. Number one in the East. They've just been steamrolling everybody. 2 15-plus game streaks this year. But, they played well last year and didn't really do much in the East. You got an experienced team right behind you in the Boston Celtics. You also have the Milwaukee Bucks, who have Giannis Antetokounmpo, who is quietly having a really good season and is no slouch. How much do you put into stock with muscle memory, with experience in the playoffs versus kind of that youthful exuberance? So you got the Cavs, the upstart team. They got a lot of youth on that squad. They got a lot of great players playing as a team, but really have never won anything since LeBron's been there. So what do you think? Would you take that playoff experience, or would you take the hot, youthful team right now in the East?
That's been an age-old debate, because you and I have heard the phrase experience is overrated. But also you and I have heard the phrase of, if you've done it so much, you can't get it wrong.
Right.
Now, with this Cleveland squad, they knocked on the door. They knocked on the door last year. And this squad is starting to be a cohesive unit. If you want to be real about it, I really think that Cleveland learned from last year. They might not be the youthful squad that we know them as. We probably know them as a squad that knocked on the door last year and were unsuccessful. But you got to look at it like this too. And, in the trend of the NBA, look at the Denver Nuggets. They knocked on the door. They knocked on the door. And then finally they won the title. And you look at the Boston Celtics. They knocked on the door. They knocked on the door. And then finally they got the title. This might be something for Cleveland. Cleveland might be knocking on the door, and this is their opportunity to get it. Now, do I think they will? I don't think so, because I hope I'm wrong. To be honest with you, I really hope I'm wrong, because I like this squad. This Cleveland squad is fun to watch, and they get it together. You can't stop them. But it's just one of those things that they got a lot to learn. The regular season and the playoffs are two very different things.
Yep.
So if they can put this together in the playoffs, then that'd be great. But we've seen a team put it together like that in the playoffs, and that was the Boston Celtics. And so when they put it together in the playoffs, it was magic. It was great. They played a Dallas squad that would not die last year. I mean, Luka, and that's the reason why I have the beef that I have with Dallas right now. Last year, Luka carried you to the playoff, to the promised land. He carried you there, and you let that man go? Like, I don't understand. You and me are still trying to process this. We're still trying to, and I don't think
everybody is.
I don't understand. I mean, he limped you into that finals, and if it wasn't for the Celtics just being full strength, then that might have been a different story. But
right.
with this squad here, with this Boston squad, I don't think they're ready to give up the Eastern Conference just yet. Cleveland's going to play really, really tough, but I'm still going with the Celtics. I can't go against them. I went against them last year, and I'm not going to do that again.
Right.
So they played very, very well. They know how to play as a unit. They've got two guys who are interchangeably great in Jaylen Brown and in Jason Tatum. These guys can intermingle really well. Then they got the bench play, and then the Porzingis factor as well too, because they won some with Porzingis, and they won some games without him as well too. Right. They won most of the season last year without Kristaps Porzingis, and then he comes in the playoffs and becomes a factor, and then Al Horford as well too in there. I mean, this squad is tough. I like Cleveland, but you got to go with that squad that's been there before and knows how to react in certain situations, because I don't think Cleveland knows just yet, but I think that they will if they keep that squad together.
And that's what's tough for me too, because man, I love Cleveland. I love watching them from top to bottom. A great team, but they don't have that one guy. I mean, Mitchell is phenomenal, Garland, but they kind of have like one will have a good game, one will have a bad game. Like they kind of go back and forth. You got Allen, you got some other guys on there, you got some great bench guys. So depth-wise, they're a great team, but I don't know if they have that guy like a Jason Tatum or a Jaylen Brown. Tatum should be up there for MVP, should be a mega superstar in the league. Why he's not, I don't know. I've talked about this before. I don't know if it's a Celtics thing. I don't know if it's a him for his personality, what it is, but he doesn't get mentioned in the pantheon of some of the Lukas and the LeBrons and the KDs. Like he's a champion, and he is probably one of the top. I'd have to put him maybe top 5, 6 players in the NBA right now, but he's not treated like that. And that's the thing that concerns me about Cleveland, is because when you get down in the playoffs and you're looking for that guy, who in Cleveland is going to be that guy? Who's going to be the Tatum? Who's going to be the Brown? Who's going to be the one to rally the team around him? And I think they're great as a team, but I think that's something that Cleveland is missing. Is I don't know if Mitchell is that guy. So that always kind of bugged me a little bit. But if you had to pick one, you're taking Celtics over everybody. Do you think the Bucks got a shot to get in there again? We talk about muscle memory of winning. Giannis has been there before. He's been on the mountaintop. He's got Dame time with him. So I mean, that team is no slouch either. Do you think the Bucks got a shot to get in there, or do you think maybe one of those young upstart teams here? You talk about the Pistons, Orlando Magic, who if they hadn't gotten hurt early in the season, I think they would be a lot higher up in the seeding. And then I got to throw my New York Knicks in there because, I'm a homer, and my boy Jaylen Brown, I got to throw him in there a little bit here. So if you had to pick one, are you taking Boston, or do you see one of maybe those either playing teams or those lower seed teams? Do you see them kind of shocking the world and getting either into the finals in the Eastern Conference Finals, or even probably making the NBA Finals? What are your thoughts on some of those teams?
I think it's going to be between Cleveland and Boston more than anything. I think it is. But don't sleep on the New York Knicks. Don't sleep on your Knicks yet. When they get healthy, I think that the Knicks can get it done. But here's my thing as well, too. This squad has not played together, a full season. There has been injuries involved. Yes, there has been. But I think once this New York Knicks team that you got going on, Hart and Brunson and Cat and all those guys, I think when they start playing, they gonna be tough. I mean, because they didn't just make this trade, get rid of the Villanova boys just to get into the Eastern Conference Finals and stay there. They didn't do that. They made a move because they wanted to win. They made a move for a player like Cat, who I think is a very generational power forward. He is a very versatile power forward. I mean, injuries always happen. That's going to be there. Injuries going to happen. You're going to have that happening. But it's all about, the next man up. That mentality is always going to be there. Don't sleep on your Knicks. But I think maybe in another year, we'll be having a different discussion in the Eastern Conference next year. I think we'll have a different discussion. I think the Knicks will be in there next year. I mean, if Boston decides, to keep their guys, which I think they will, and Cleveland, I think they'll keep their crew together because they're a core crew. But I think that the New York Knicks still are not done yet. But when they get full strength, I'm going to be side-eyeing the Knicks, during the playoffs. I'm going to be looking at them and seeing where they are, because they could creep,
Right. And when they're on, and I've been a little disappointed the last couple of games here with some losses. Charlotte, most notably, I haven't seen much of Karl Anthony Towns, and that was one of my biggest things I talked about the other episode is, I mean, with Jalen going down, this is why they made the trade. This is why they got rid of Randall, because Randall was never available. And to me, the best ability is availability. You got Karl Anthony Towns, who should be putting up 30 and 10 every game. And he's just, sometimes he seems a little timid, which I'm used to growing up to the 80s and 90s Knicks, who were anything but timid. They punched you in the face. They had to be, because the East was rough. You had to go through the bad boy Pistons. You had to go through the Bulls. You had to go through the Celtics. I mean, you had some rough teams to go through. So I mean, even some of those Heat teams, when the Heat came in with Alonzo Mourning, there was some battles with those teams. So I when I see the Knicks, man, I need to see that oomph from them, and that's the thing that concerns me is I don't see a lot of that. But I tell you what, the East is going to be interesting. I know it's not. I know a lot of people think the East is not as deep as the West, but to me, I really believe it is, because you do have some great teams in there that are creeping up, and I love seeing. I love seeing Boston. The Detroit Pistons back up there, because they've been horrible for years. So to see those kind of bad boy Pistons, I miss that, and I miss the Tayshaun Prince, Pistons, Rasheed Wallace. I miss those Pistons, and Orlando Magic. Of course, you had Penny Hardaway and Shaq. So to see those two teams starting to bubble up with some youth, Paolo Banchero, who, again, I don't think if he got hurt early in the season, I think that team could make a little more noise, but they're now healthy. So the East is going to be interesting to watch, but there's not going to be a lot of movement. Now let's jump over to the West, because right now the Wild Wild West it is going crazy. So you got OKC, who's ahead of everybody, 57 wins. And then you got everybody else. And everybody else is within a few games of each other. So the Rockets on their 8-game winning streak, play the Heat Friday night. We record this on Friday night. So the game is kind of going on right now, but I haven't watched it watched the score yet, because I want to watch it, be surprised. So they're on a tear, and that 8-game winning streak took them from 5th to 2nd. So right now, seeding in the West is up for grabs. I think this may come down to the last day. But my first question is, you got OKC. Again, here we go. Another young, wonderful team. I think SGA is that superstar. He is that dude. Probably going to get the MVP, I think, with Joker being hurt these last few games and him not being out there I think it helps him, because it shows how much the Nuggets miss him, but I also think it hurts him because SGA, this is probably going to be one of the closest MVP races I think we've ever had. But last year, OKC was number 1, 2. So why do we think this team is different than last year? Because last year, they beat the Pelicans in the first round 4-0, which, it's the Pelicans. But then they lost in the semis to the Mavs, to Luka, steamrolled them 2-4. So why should we believe in OKC this year compared to last year?
They got a little bigger this year. They knew that they needed the rebounding and the rim protection this year. The rim protection and the paint job that they got this year has been something that's helped SGA a lot. That's something that was something that was needed for them. Yes, you have to be big in the Western Conference because there's a lot of height. There's a lot of strength in the Western Conference. The Western Conference is just big, so with Jokic there, then, before he got traded, you had Anthony Davis in LA, but still LeBron's still a big guy as well, too. You've got height all over the West.
Right.
And you've got that strength in the West. So you have to go at them. I think this year they're tougher after this year. Like, once again, the Luka effect again. Luka pretty much limped in there and he took everybody out because he just would not die. That's just what it is. This is grit. He had a lot of grit in that playoff. I think now OKC has that grit that Dallas has, that Dallas had last year. They got bigger, Chet Holmgren. They added him. That was one of the first things they did, get Alex Caruso, get Chet Holmgren. They decided to get bigger. They needed rim protection. They needed glass work. They needed the rebounding. They needed that. And that's what they got this year. And that helped them as a team. So that flourished the guard play, and that helped the inside-outside game where, SGA could do what he wanted to on the offensive end. It was important that they got that glass work, that paint job, that they got that. And that worked out well as a team. They were great. They're doing good. And that's another team that I like. I mean, I kind of want these young teams to play each other in the title. I really do. It's fun basketball.
Yes, it is. It is a lot of fun. But the biggest thing is, my question is again, we have so much movement in the West. The Warriors and with Steph Curry, and then we'll talk about Steph here in a little bit. But the Warriors 6th. You got the Clips and the T-Wolves are literally a game and a half away from the play-in, getting into the 6th. And the T-Wolves, they had a great year last year, so they kind of have some muscle memory. They started getting a little healthier. You got Anthony Edwards, a.k.a. they want him to be Mike, which he's not. You have the Stifle Tower down there, so, I mean, he's getting healthier too. How important is seeding in the playoffs? Because this is going to get to where, OKC is first. They're going to play some lower teams, but everybody else is going to be moving. Over the next 10, 11 games, there's going to be so much movement in the West. It's going to be crazy. But how important is this seeding? And do these teams even worry about it? Do they just play who's in front of us attitude? Or do they really look at matchups and go, okay, if we win, we have to play these guys. But if we lose, then, maybe we slide back and we only have to play these guys. What are your thoughts on that?
We saw a little bit of that last year with where the Lakers were last year. We saw a little bit of that last year. Seeding in the Western Conference the reason why seeding is so important in the West and it is the East is because the West is deep. You've got teams that are 4 seeds in the West that'll be 2 seeds in the East. Right. You've got squads that are on the playoff spot in the Eastern Conference and they're sub 500. And you've got the West who have teams that are 8th place that could be mid-grade in the East. Right. So to me, seeding in the West is very important because you might be getting a squad that should be a 3 seed and you're a 5 seed or you're a 6 seed. So that 4 or 5 matchup in the West is going to be something I'm going to be paying attention to. That 4 or 5 matchup, whoever that may be, because with the way that the rankings are going, it could be Denver or Minnesota in that spot. And that was 2 squads that many thought would win the NBA title last year. And they end up playing each other in the middle of the playoffs. Whoa. And whoever wins that one, because that has the possibility of being a 6 or 7 game series. And then they come out not so full strength and play a squad like the Lakers. Right. Or play a squad, I dare say, OKC. And they may not be full strength. And then OKC after they had their 1 seed and their 1-8, and they killed their 1-8, they're waiting for the winner, and the winner might be limping in.
Right. Well, that's the thing that concerns me is OKC. You're 8. Your 8 may be the T-Wolves, and you talk about a team that made it to the Western Conference Finals last year. So, I mean, and that's where this is going to get super interesting. And it goes back to the same question in the East. Do you go for that youth or do you go for the experience? Because right now you talk about you got the Nuggets with Joker and that team. They've been to the mountaintop. You got the Lakers with LeBron and Luka who have the experience. I don't know if they got the depth of the squad. I like Connect and I like Reeves and some of the other guys that they got on that team, but I don't know if they're big enough to combat with some of these other teams in the West, but they've been there before. You got the Warriors and, Curry healthy, Draymond Green, and then you put Jimmy Buckets on there, who is a absolute playoff monster. So now you've got the Rockets, a young squad, OKC, still a young squad, and then you have these, older guys, these guys that have been through the muck and the mud. Again, same question is like, do you see those teams bubbling up and taking out a lot of those young upstart teams, or does that youthful exuberance kind of take hold and they kind of get rid of the old cats?
You know what? I think that we can sum it up in one thing: momentum. And that's one of the things also too is momentum. You can talk about experience, you can talk about the youthful, the exuberance, the young, and all that other stuff. But to me, it comes down to momentum, because that was what did it for Dallas last year. Dallas had momentum. Luka may have been playing really, really hard and not succumbing to injury, even though he was hurting, but the momentum was there. And if you want to be real about it too, the year before when the Miami Heat went for the NBA title and got there, and they weren't supposed to be there.
Right.
Yeah, they got some favorable matchups with Giannis not playing in the first round when they played Milwaukee. They got some favorable stuff that went their way, but they played a Boston squad. They went 7 games with a Boston squad that eventually won the world title the next year and beat that squad and went to the NBA Finals, although they did get destroyed by a Denver squad that was way better than them. Sometimes momentum is not on your side in certain situations. They just ran into a Denver squad that was just better than them, and that's basically what it was. I mean, you can't substitute momentum for a squad that was better than you from the get-go. You had all the momentum in the world. Denver was just better than you. It is what it is. But in certain cases, like as of right now, momentum has got to be the biggest thing for me with any playoff stretch or anything. That goes with the NCAA tournament. That goes with the NBA Finals. That goes with any sport. If you got momentum, especially inside of a series, like where you have a series involved,
right?
Momentum is going to be big for you. You're going to need momentum. So I think I don't know if it's age. I don't know if it's that youthful exuberance that you're talking about. To me, I think it's momentum more than anything.
It's going to be interesting. And again, this last couple of weeks with the playoffs, it's just going to be bananas. I am so excited about it. Give me your East. Give me your West. As of right now, as things lay, who do you have in the finals, East versus West? Who you got?
I'm going to go with the young squads, and I'm going to say Cleveland, and I'm going to say OKC. I want that. That's what I want.
You got 1-1 making it through.
That's what I want in my heart. I think the NBA does want that, to be honest with you. I think they do want that because, SGA is going to win MVP this year. I think he's going to.
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't say flat out give it to him because Jokic has played very, very well. You can make a case for LeBron before he got hurt.
Right.
Make a case for him. Some dark horses like Donovan Mitchell may be around. But more than anything, SGA's got to win MVP this year. I think he does. And I think that they find a way to get past that Celtics squad. I think Cleveland finds a way to get past that Celtics squad. Mm-hmm. And I think that OKC will find a way to get past that Houston squad. I
Right.
think they might find a way to do it. So I think that they're going to do that. It's going to be that Young Guns NBA Finals this year. Give it to the young guys.
And I know the NBA does not want that because you're talking about two small market teams. You know, they want the Celtics versus the Lakers and the drama. They would love that. The curse of Luka Doncic, the Mavs fans crying outside. You know, the NBA would love to see that right now. I would love to see, of course, my Knicks get in there. I really do. I still think we're kind of missing something. And again, I think a lot of it has to do with some grit. I too have the Cavs coming out of the East because, again, when it's all said and done, top to bottom, depth on the bench, that Cavs team can rebound. They can play defense. They got 3-4 guys that can score 30, 40 points on you. They are, to me, one of the most well-rounded teams I think I've really ever seen. They're not top-heavy. They're not dependent on one guy or two guys. They've got a whole mess of guys. So I really do see Cleveland coming out of the East. But my West, especially the way he's playing, and he comes in to this playoffs a little bit healthy, I got the Nuggets. I think Nikola Jokic is the best basketball player in the world right now. The dude is averaging a triple-double. The dad bod god, this who doesn't look like he looks like a Russian school teacher. Like you would think, like, how is this guy averaging a 28-point triple-double in the NBA? And he is just, I'm not taking away from SGA. I think he's having a phenomenal season. I think if you take both of them away from their teams, the Nuggets are essentially, you know, a last place team. They're terrible without Jokic.
Oh,
you take SGA away from OKC, I think they could still hang. I think they're kind of a Kings, Sacramento, or a Clippers. I think they're still kind of in the mix. So to me, that's when you talk about most valuable player, I look at it for, like, you take that guy away from his team, their team is trash. And to me, Jokic has been there before. He's got the winning muscle memory. So that's mine. Is I got Cleveland Nuggets. I think they've just, that way he's playing is phenomenal. But dude, anybody right now in the NBA can win this thing because of the way a lot of these teams are playing and the way a lot of these teams have superstars on it. So as we get closer, 3 from deep here, we will have kind of a playoff spectacular. So be prepared for that. Be prepared for it, Shannon, because I may call on you again here because I want to have a big thing once seeding is set and once everything is ready. I just kind of want to really deep dive into this. So because I think this is going to be probably one of the most exciting NBA playoffs we've seen in a while because you just don't know who can bubble up and take over this thing right now. So we're going to take a timeout, man. You know, I love watching your show. I love watching quick hits. And I love the fact that you talk hockey. There's not a lot. You know, I'm over here on the East Coast. And, you know, hockey, I live right next to the Washington Capitals, who are playing really well right now. The Great Eight chase, you know, with Ovechkin chasing Wayne Gretzky. That is just all over the place where I live right now, who is having a phenomenal season, especially getting deeper in his age. But I know you love hockey, and you talk about it a lot on your show, and I appreciate that because I don't think hockey gets enough love as a sport as a whole, of course, here in America, even though we have most of the NHL teams. Yep. But I'm going to challenge you, and I asked you this question. I want you to hit me up here because I know you deep dive in this a lot here. I want right now your top 5 NHL squads, starting from 5 down. I don't care about standings or record or any of that kind of stuff. I want your top 5 squads who just can rip through the playoffs, who you are just in love with right now. Who is your top 5?
Hey, I do appreciate it, man. You know, I enjoy some hockey. I really do. And so And with you wearing that Rangers jersey, it kind of hurts me a little bit because, you took the Hurricanes out, my hometown squad last year.
Yeah.
And I'll be talking about that in a minute. But since you told me to give you my 5, I'm going to give you my 5. And I'm going to start with number 5. I had to change it around on the fly. I had a different team at 5, but now I had to move a different team in there. And I'll go ahead and say it. If you're watching this, the name Mikko Rantanen will come up in this a little bit. So I know that some of my friends are going to kill me for that in the worst way, but I got it. So number 5 right now is the Dallas Stars, and I switched them around because of their loss that they took on Thursday night with the Tampa Bay Lightning. They got into a shootout, lost in overtime with the shootout. But the reason for that is because that is the team that Mikko Rantanen is on right now. I talked about that on Quick Hits, how Dallas could be in contention for a cup because of Mikko Rantanen, his prowess and how well he's played. In the 5 games that he's been at Dallas right now, he's managed to put up 4 points, which was more than what he put up with his last team, who he only played 13 games with. I'll get to that later. But he's in a very good line right now with the Dallas Stars. Dallas Stars broke him off with a good bit of money. He's with a good squad, with a good line with Matt Duchene and Jason Roberts. Dallas could win the Stanley Cup this year. They were a squad before Mikko Rantanen got there. They were a good squad already. They had a few injuries. They do have one of the best goaltenders with Jake Ottinger, but Dallas could win it. They're in a tight race for second place in the Central Division in the Western Conference, but adding Mikko Rantanen to that squad, more scoring punch, is going to help them. Dallas at number 5. Number 4 is Mikko Rantanen's first team. My childhood team, the Colorado Avalanche, at number 4. The reason why Colorado got rid of Mikko Rantanen is because they didn't want to pay him $14 million a year. They were paying that to the man, Nathan MacKinnon, who is one of the best players in the NHL right now. 100 points yet again for another season. He leads the NHL in points, leads the league in assists. He is one of the best playmakers in the NHL right now. Colorado's on a tear. They beat the Ottawa Senators Thursday night 5-1. 4 goals in the first period alone as a squad. Cole Makar is still one of the best defensemen in the league. Colorado had trouble with the goaltending. They're getting that right. That second place spot that they're going for in the Central Division is with them and the Dallas Stars. I think they'll get past the Dallas Stars because of Nathan MacKinnon's play and the fact they got the goaltending right. So Colorado is number 4. Number 3, the homerism is going to come out because the number 3 team is the Carolina Hurricanes.
Wow, okay.
If you have not been watching the Carolina Hurricanes right now, you need to start watching them. They're on a 8-game winning streak after the Mikko Rantanen deal. They got rid of Mikko Rantanen. They've won 8 straight games. The goaltending has been great. Kochekov killing it in the goal. Frederick Anderson killing it in the goal. They've won 4 games apiece as they've been interchangeable. Under 1 goals against average between the two. A 95-0 save percentage between the two. In the past 8 games, they've been able to link it together with the scoring. Aho did very well with the scoring. They've got the young prospect that they traded for from Dallas in the Mikko Rantanen deal. He's doing very well right now with the squad. Colorado's looking at Mikko Rantanen like, thanks for leaving. We appreciate it. They've got something to play for now. So Carolina, and of course, Carolina's got one of the best coaches in the NHL. Not just in the NHL, but in the state of North Carolina alone, in Rod Brindamore. And that's tough coming from a basketball playing state.
Right.
But Rod Brindamore has been incredible as the coach. Played on that Stanley Cup team that got Carolina their first pro sports championship, 2005-2006. I saw that season. Wonderful season. Rod Brindamore, you're the man. Run for governor when you retire. So do that right there. So number 3, got my hometown Carolina Hurricanes. Number 2 is the Winnipeg Jets. The Winnipeg Jets are the darling of the league. They were on that long win streak with their new coach. They beat the Edmonton Oilers in overtime on Thursday. They've got a tough game. No, not really a tough game, but with it being 2 weeks into playoffs right now, every game is tough. They're playing the Buffalo Sabres, kind of bottom of the league. But right now, the Winnipeg Jets, I think that's the squad is going to do it. And they're a young squad on top of that, too. Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connor, playing very well as a cohesive young squad, one of the youngest lines in the NHL. They're scoring goals all over the place. Connor Hellebuyck, who's going to win the Vezina Trophy this year, best goalie in the NHL right now. Winnipeg was a surprise. They shouldn't have been, because they ended the year on a winning streak coming into this season, and they began on a winning streak as well too in the first 15 games of the NHL. Set a record for that. I think they'll win Lord Stanley's Cup this year. Number 2, they're my number 2 team. But the number 1 team right now in my power rankings has got to be your Washington Capitals.
Really? Number 1? Wow.
Why? And I'll tell you why. They're tied with Winnipeg right now. I know that the whole Ali Ovechkin beating Wayne Gretzky's record is the biggest story in the NHL. I get it. But this Washington Capitals squad has got to be one of the best, is the best squad in the Eastern Conference. And they're fighting for Winnipeg. They're fighting with Winnipeg for being the best team in the NHL right now. They're tied with 100 points each.
Right.
So this is wonderful right here. They're playing very well. You got to give credit where credit is due with the leadership of the great 8, who has 888 goals right now, 7 away from Wayne Gretzky's record. But Dylan Strome, who is the center on that first line with Alexander Ovechkin, the young man has done a lot of planning. He's done a lot of leadership as well from the youthful spot there at the center spot. He's anchoring that line, letting Alexander Ovechkin do what he does with the great scoring. He's been the guy that's on the side. He's been feeding them the puck most of the time. He's been the guy that's most of his assists this year have came from Dylan Strome. This is a good squad. Washington could mess around and win the Stanley Cup this year. They could mess around and do it. These 5 teams right now that I'm talking about right now, I believe could win the Stanley Cup. I believe it with every bit of it. I'm a little worried about Carolina because of their record away from home.
Right.
I'm a little worried about them. I'm worried about the youth that the Winnipeg Jets have. I'm worried about Dallas not being able to slam the door in the third period. I'm afraid of that a little bit. I've got some issues with the Mikko Rantanen thing as well, too. He's being too much of a distraction. But that also helped Carolina because they've been playing very, very well since he's left the locker room. Brendan Moore's got the locker room back. And the Washington Capitals are just sneaking up on everybody because they're so busy looking at Alexander Ovechkin. They're forgetting that he's got 4 of the guys playing with him, and that's who's winning. So those are my 5. Oh,
and that's why I brought you on, man. Got to bring you up here. I mean, it comes full circle because this is not just a regular Rangers jersey. This is Mr. Wayne Gretzky himself here. So I got the great one on here. And I think if Ovechkin didn't want the record, I think it would be awesome if he just retired, dropped the puck and said 888. I'm good with that. I'm the great 888. I think it fits, but I know he wants that record. So I'll quickly give you my top 5. I don't go as in depth because, man, you love this stuff, and I appreciate that. So my number 5, the Edmonton Oilers. You talk about a franchise that is starving to get back to holding that cup. Connor McDavid, one of the best players in the world. I think they really, that city really just gets behind that team and lives and dies by them. So I got them number 5. Number 4, Vegas. Vegas has been there before. They're first in the Pacific. I think they're playing really good. That has one of probably the best and most fun home ice advantages in the NHL. Like, you watch those games, and I'd love to go watch. I like hockey live. It's probably one of the most fun sports to watch live. It is phenomenal. It is nonstop. It's almost like a soccer game. It's like as soon as they drop the puck to the end, it's just nonstop. But that Vegas atmosphere looks insane to play in. Number 3, I got your Winnipeg Jets. first in the Central. I think they could win the whole thing. I mean, they are playing phenomenal. Every time I turn the TV on, they're doing something spectacular. So 48-18. What can you say? They are just a solid team, and I know Canada is dying for a Stanley Cup winner again. Look, I mean, Sidney Crosby helped them win in some of the championships. So Canada, as a Canadian team, has won, but they're dying for Lord Stanley's Cup again. I had Washington number 2 because right now that team is playing phenomenal, but I think the Ovechkin factor is really what's driving them, because they know, and I think they feel that if he breaks this record, if they can go on a tear in the playoffs and send him off, I could see him, look, I got a championship, I got the cup, I got the record, I'm done. Like, I could see that, and I can see the team kind of really rallying around that and motivated by it, because when you see records in any sport and guys get close to those records, a lot of times they get tight. The team gets tight. They can kind of sense, the stress and the pressure. You don't see that in Washington. They're playing really good hockey, and I see it around here. But number 1, I got the Panthers. Look, first in the Atlantic. They won last year. In order to be the man, you got to beat the man. I hear that a lot around here, and boom, I hear that a lot. So until somebody dethrones, and I used to live in South Florida, I've been to Panthers games with them throwing the rats on the ring and everything. I remember Mr. Van Beesbrook, I have all of that when the Panthers came out. I'm going way back, man, way back machine. But to me, you talk about winning mentality, muscle mentality, the toughness, the Chuck, my man there, he is watching him skate and fight, and then dad's up in the stands. Like, it is like just such a cool kind of father and son moment thing. But I think the Panthers right now are the team to beat, because they've been there. They've hoisted the cup. They know what it takes. So that's my top 5. A little bit different from yours, but again, I'm not. You love this stuff, so man, that's why I'm glad I brought you on. I had to get you on this, so I thank you so much for participating in my timeout, man. That's awesome. Thank you. Real quick, who do you got hoisting at the end of the season?
Man, I got to go with the fever pitch. I'm going with the Winnipeg Jets. I'm going young. I want this young squad. I like this young squad. I would love to see Carolina do it. That's a heart pick of mine. I would like to see Colorado do it as well. But Winnipeg, night in and night out, the goaltending has been great. Their physicality is very good. They've got a young scoring line that likes to get up and down ice. They're fast, very, very fast squad. But what worries me about them is, there's squads like Dallas is physical, Colorado,
right,
and that Western Conference is tough. Vegas is physical. Vegas is very physical, to be honest with you. They're probably one of those physical teams in the NHL right now. That's what kind of scares me about Winnipeg, but I think at the end of the day, they're going to be fine. I think that they show how cohesive of a squad they really are. That coach there, he's a first-year coach as well, too, and that'll be big. But I think Winnipeg's going to do it.
Gotcha. Since I live here, the kind of the homer in me, if Ovechkin breaks the record, I think they hoist the cup. I think it's a no-brainer. I think that getting that off his shoulders, not having to worry about doing it next year, I think what that Washington wins the whole thing. If not, I still got Florida. I think they go back-to-back. Them Florida teams like to go back-to-back. The Lightning did it 3 times in a row, technically. So I got to rep my Florida squad here. So we're going to see what happens, man, because, those NHL playoffs, they heating up like the NBA playoffs. So we're going to go time in here. So I appreciate you jumping on that. Now we're going to get into the layup line here because I got my little quick stories. So we're just going to jump in. I'll ask you a quick question, so just hit me back real quick. So we got the first layup here is out with a splash. My man Steph Curry hurt. I can't remember what they called it, but basically he fell on his butt and bruised his butt. Luckily enough, there was no damage. Lucky enough, he didn't fall on his back. So it's one thing to bruise your hip and your butt, let alone he didn't break anything. But right now, with the Golden State Warriors sitting at that 6th spot and a bunch of teams sniffing to get up in there, do you think Jimmy Buckets and Draymond Green and company can right the ship to keep Golden State in that 6th spot without Steph Curry?
I think so. I mean, you've been calling him Hemi Butler all through the show, and I like that. This is a very good opportunity for him because think about that, though. That would be the biggest middle finger to the Miami Heat right now. The fact that Steph Curry, who was balling, who's been balling, like still doing great, over 5,000 3-pointers all time. That's going to be a record that's going to be standing for a long time. Greatest shooter ever. He gets hurt. He's the heart and soul of that squad. Let's be honest. He is. But they didn't just bring Jimmy Butler in there to just play sidekick to him. They brought Jimmy Butler in there because he gives them an opportunity in that Western Conference. So I think that he keeps them in that 6th spot. I think that they will be fine because Steph Curry will more than likely come back maybe 4 or 5 games later. He might just come back in there. It was a contusion. It wasn't a break. It wasn't anything that could have kept him out for a considerable amount of time.
Right.
So there's not urgency for him to get back. There's not urgency.
Right.
Because got guys who can still play. So they'll be fine, I believe. So yeah. I
think it was I want to say a blessing in disguise because Steph Curry is one of those guys that loves to play all the time and will run himself to where he runs out of gas. And that's one of the reasons why they've lost the championship to Cleveland is he was hurt, and instead of resting, he ran himself out of gas, and then Cleveland ended up coming back in that epic finals. But I think they're going to be fine. Also, I think him getting 4 or 5 games off, if Jimmy can be 30-point, playoff Jimmy, I think they're sitting pretty good. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And luckily enough, knock on wood, he didn't. From what we see, he didn't hurt himself that bad because the playoffs are not the playoffs without Steph Curry. So, second layup here, Bronny James and Mr. LeBron. Please, I'm not going to knock your son too hard, but this is what comes with the territory here. So please don't Stephen A. me. Although, if you did, I wouldn't hate on it because, you probably make me famous. So, Bronny James, the other night, in a Bucks loss, 118-189, they had no Luka, no LeBron. Luka was resting. LeBron, again, still with that groin injury. 17 points, 7 out of 10 shooting, 3 rebounds, and 5 assists. So, his best game as a professional. And if you listen to that game, you would have thought he scored 65 points because every time he hit a bucket, the announcers lost their mind like this guy was. Did you see that as an overrated performance, or do you see that as, something bigger brewing with Bronny?
It's not enough to tell still. It's not enough to tell. I mean, this is his first year. I know that he's LeBron's son. I get it. I know that he's going to get the media buzz. I know that's going to happen. I mean, the man scored 17 points. I mean, the rest of the league is scoring 17 points and nobody cares. They're only doing this because this is LeBron's son.
Right.
And possibly because he plays for the Lakers. That's maybe the 5% to the 95.
Right.
I mean, and of course, he's getting looked at from being in that weak draft. And from, not really a weak draft, but a draft with not a lot of star power. Let's just leave it at that. It's not a weak draft. It's just a boring draft. Let's just say a boring draft. Okay. But still, it's not enough to tell. I don't think that you can write home about it. And he did it in a losing effort on top of that, too. So Whatever.
I gotcha. Yeah, I'm not big on it too. Look, LeBron got to live his dream out. He got to play long enough to play next to his son, which to me is beautiful. As a father, I think that is phenomenal. LeBron James has earned it. He's given and paid his dues to the league, so he wants to be the GM of the Lakers and get his boy in. I'm cool with that. But yeah, the biggest thing for me is Bronny. This is going to follow you your whole career. You are always going to be your father's son. It is going to be immensely difficult to get out of that shadow because you got to play for 20 plus years and score 50,000 points. So right now, you better get used to the criticism. And that's why I'm a little surprised with LeBron. Look, I appreciate you sticking up for your boy, but tough love is tough love. And sometimes you got to put your kid out there and let him fly and let him deal with this himself. Because if not, when you're gone, you're going to follow him around the NBA every game and be up there like the high school, parents and yelling at the refs and stuff. So I hope this is more to come. Look, he's a good kid. He's paying his dues, even though a lot of people don't think so. They think he was grandfathered in or whatever. But it'll be interesting to see how much he develops. I still think they should have kept him in the G League and really kept him and developed him before they just kind of put him out there. But still, it is still early. So it'll be interesting to see what happens into next year with Bronny. Next layup here. DeMar DeRozan, 27th player in the NBA to reach 25,000 points. Right now, you got LeBron, Durant, Harden, Westbrook, Curry, your only active players with 25,000 points or more. Is DeMar overrated and just not looked as one of the better players that have played this game? Look, he's having a great first season with the Kings. 22 points, almost 4 rebounds a game, 4.2 assists, shooting 48, almost 49% from the field, 6-time All-Star, 3-time All-NBA. He won a gold medal in Rio, 2014 World Cup. But I think what's really going to knock him down, and I think a lot of people hold this against him, is he was involved in the Kawhi trade. Could never get Toronto over the hump. 2018, he gets traded. Kawhi Leonard comes and wins the chip. So, that's got to follow him a little bit. But do you think DeMar DeRozan is one of the more underrated NBA players that we've had?
I think so. I wouldn't say underrated. I'd probably say unfortunate more than anything. The poor guy misses out on 2 titles, and Michael Davis brought this up on an episode of his show Out of Pocket. He's been the guy that's missed out on championships. They trade him to San Antonio. Toronto wins the championship. Then they trade him away he goes to the Bulls. And then there you go. Another title missed. It's just like, wow, this poor guy can't catch a break.
Right.
And I really think that his heart left him when Toronto dealt him because he loved Toronto.
Yeah.
He was Toronto basketball for a long time. And then later on, Kawhi comes, gets him a championship, and it's like DeMar DeRozan never even existed in a Toronto Raptors jersey. And that kind of sucks, man. It really does. But he's an underrated player. I like DeMar DeRozan. I liked him when he was with my Chicago Bulls. I really did. And, now he's with the Sacramento Kings, who are not a bad squad at all. They're a few pieces away. They play in the Western Conference. It's kind of tough in there, in the small market of the smaller part of California, Sacramento. There's been talks of dealing away Sacramento and getting rid of the Kings and all that. But the Kings have managed to keep themselves out of being sold. They got rid of De'Aaron Fox to San Antonio, which, will give them probably some pieces in the draft.
Right.
To save them some money. And they could do a little something in Sacramento. But, DeMar DeRozan, I like the player. I think he is underrated. I think he's an underrated player.
Me too. And, to me, the Kings probably got one of the best deals because they got more for De'Aaron Fox than the Lakers got for Luka, or than the Mavericks got for Luka Doncic.
Yeah.
Because you got Zach LaVine, who is no slouch.
No.
You got some first round picks in there. You still have Domantas Sabonis, who I love to watch his dad Arvydas back in the day. Another Russian school teacher, kind of playing basketball, which is great. He's a double machine, so I hope he gets healthy. And I think the Kings, if they can get healthy, I think they're one of the scarier teams because they have that height. They have Sabonis. They have DeRozan. They have LaVine. I think they can actually make a little bit of noise in the West, so you got to watch out for that. So, Shannon, I appreciate you being on here, man. We've been on for a little over an hour, but you know what? It's been a hell of a lot of fun. I appreciate you being on here. Let the people know where they can find you.
You can find me on Boom Broadcasting doing quick hits. I drop every week. Anytime there's any sports news out there, I'm going to chime in on it with some analysis, with some debate, with some questions. I appreciate the love. Since I've came back in the tail end of February talking a little bit of wrestling, there's been some views on there. I've had to tweak the show around a little bit, trying to go for the quickness. I don't want to be on here for an hour and some, but I'm with my man NY, which is what makes it great. I had a great time. I couldn't do an hour and 15 on my own. That's going to be tough. So.
It is very tough, man. But I appreciate you being here, man. Guys, if you haven't checked Shannon out, Podcast Smitty on Quick Hits, man, on Boom Broadcasting, please do so, man. He's got some great stuff. So, and again, just get on Boom Broadcasting. Like, subscribe, get on the train, man, because this is one of the best podcasts. I can't even talk about it, how great it is. Look, he got fireworks. That's it. Boom. Greatness. We are awesome. So thank you, Shannon. I appreciate you being here. I will check you later, man. We will hook up again and have a great weekend.
Thank you, man.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for being and watching 3 from Deep and a heck of an episode here. Thank you, Shannon, for being on. Guys, jump on Boom Broadcasting, like, subscribe. We're back again Monday. Again, 3 from Deep, 3 times a week. Peace. We'll see you on Monday.